Welcome to E4 Electric, your number one source for what's happening now in the world of electric cars. Today we're going to talk about, well, the Senate tax bill in the United States. I know it is kind of isolated to us here, but I think the global sales and what other countries do with their laws and so forth does depend on this. So let's talk about it a little bit. But before that, if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. If you're interested in staying up to date with what's going on in the world of electric cars, you came to the right place. Please go ahead and click on the subscribe button down there and the bell notification icon so you don't miss anything moving forward. But most importantly, become a part of this community. All right, let's talk about, once again, the Senate bill was passed, I believe, on Friday, December 4th, or was it Thursday? It was kind of around midnight, and it looked like it had an amendment from Senator Flake, I believe, that basically eliminated the electric vehicle tax credit for, on a federal level. Now, this has nothing to do with a state level. This is still just a federal level type of the thing. So, but it is $7,500 here in the United States, and it can really affect the sales. So let's talk about what this is really going to mean. Now, my claim here is that Tesla is actually going to come out on top and separate itself from the competition even further. But I just want to be very clear that this is definitely going to damage sales of most of electric cars, because when we're talking about $30,000 or $40,000 car and we're talking about $7,500 tax credit, we're talking about 25% off, right? Now, I have to say that a lot of electric cars really do need this credit, because it is still expensive to make electric cars compared to gas cars. So just kind of to compete in price, we really do need that $7,500 credit. On another hand, I feel like a lot of car makers, and I'm going to include Chevy Bolt in this, and Nissan Leaf and a lot of other cars that kind of got very comfortable with this credit and saying, yeah, our cars can cost a little bit more than the gas car, but it's going to be compensated by the $7,500 tax credit, so we're okay. Well, I think that it's actually slowing down the progress, especially for those companies who are just still not trying to get their price point under what it should be and compete with the gas cars in the same class without relying on this government credit. So I think that's probably a good kick in the butt for the industry, but let's separate a few things here, right? Let's talk about Model S and the Model X, because they're in a higher bracket, and I'm also going to include these two guys, which one of them is Jaguar I-Pace. They're coming out with this year, and the Porsche Mission E. These are pretty much going to be the main competitors to the Model S, right? And these cars are going to be priced at about $80,000 and up. So let's talk about them. Now, as you probably know, $7,500 compared to $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 car is less than 10% of the sales price. And a lot of people who pay that much money for cars, including myself, it's nice to have, but it's not going to stop us from buying those cars or leasing those cars, because you're really talking about, let's say, just take maybe an average lease price if you don't put much down on Model S. You gain $1,100 versus $1,200. I don't think that's extra $100 per month, which is kind of a bummer. I don't think it's going to stop people who are actually interested in these cars, interested in this car, and obviously interested in this car, right? So these are the people who will be like, oh, damn it, got to squeeze a few more extra dollars, or not in some cases. But I don't think these are the people who are going to be really, I don't think the sales will suffer that much, definitely. Don't forget, right now, if you want to order a Model S, you still have to wait until March or even April to get it. So it's very much in demand, obviously, for the I-Pace and for the Mission E. That will be the same story, where people are going to be probably waiting in line for a while to get it. So I don't see it being a problem in the next year or two. But let's talk about the Model 3. Because actually, let's just go back and talk about something like Chevy Bolt here, and of course the Nissan Leaf, which are cars that really need that $7,500 tax credit. And this is why I think these sales will actually be hurting, because there is I believe in Georgia, in the state of Georgia here, they did take away the sales tax, I'm sorry, the rebate, the state rebate, and I think it wasn't even that big. Maybe it was $4,000 or $5,000, so it was significant. And the sales of the Leaf have completely dropped. Like they went up and then they completely crashed. Now, the sales of the Model S and I think the sales of even the BMW i3 did not really suffer that much. So it was just really Nissan Leaf. But don't forget, Nissan Leaf was, and still right now, is a crappy car until they come out with the new generation. So that kind of makes sense. And you know what? Let Nissan and Chevy come up with better cars, because right now if you compare Nissan Leaf or Chevy Bolt to their competitors, I'm talking about the gas cars, their competitors, the gas car, I mean, look at this car, right? And look what it can do. Yes, it's electric with impressive range, but if you compare it to another car, by the way, this starts at $38,000. If you compare it to another hatchback that's a 4-door compact car, we're about $10,000 off. So we either need to have better technology in this car, so it is worth $38,000 and plus, or Chevy needs to figure out how to get the cost down and compete in that class. And that's just market. So I have nothing against it. Will the sales suffer? Yeah, they will suffer. But right now it looks like, for example, in Europe, they can't even produce them enough. They're kind of slowing down the sales there. So it's actually not that big. Now, Kona Terry in the chat room asks, when would that tax credit removal take effect, 2018 or 2019? It's January 1st of 2018, if it's going to pass. And let me tell you something. It looks like that Senator Flake's proposal, it looks like it was denied, or at least tabled for now. But nobody knows. This is the crazy thing about it. Once again, I did the research last night, I did the research this morning, and there's almost nothing that's indicating what is actually in this freaking bill, which is insane because it's already passed, right? Now, don't forget, in the United States, we have two different, parts of Congress, House and a Senate. Now, House definitely wants to eliminate it, but the Senate wants to keep it, at least for now. It might look that way. They still have to make changes and make sure that it becomes one bill. And we don't know what's going to happen with that, but right now it looks like maybe that amendment might not pass, so maybe they're keeping it, but nobody knows. Anyway, so these cars will just, the sales will suffer, need to do a better job. And this is why I think the Model 3 is going to come up on top, because that car was, Tesla did a smart thing. They already told everybody they were pricing it at $35,000 and up. They didn't say $25,000 because that's what they would have done it maybe a few years ago, like they did with the Model S, because that's what really the price would have been. They right away priced it at $35,000 and completely did not mention any kind of incentive. So that car was already being kind of marketed, if you will, as a $35,000 car. And don't forget, this car, unlike a Chevy Bolt and Nissan Leaf, is not competing with the compact 4-door cars at $25,000. As I already mentioned it, I have a separate video for this. This is going to compete with this car, which is a BMW 3 Series, and Audi A4 and a Mercedes C-Class, but this is going to be the main competitor, because people are really not looking at Tesla right now as, oh, it's a green car, and also, no. People looking at Teslas now like, hey, this is a high-tech car, cutting edge, great design, and if it's electric, that's great, but I'm buying it for those other reasons that I really care about. And this is going to be the competition to them. And this car, and you already, if you want to search my channel, you'll see that I'm comparing the Model 3 to BMW 3 Series. And price-wise, the BMW 3 Series is way more expensive, I think by $5,000, $6,000, or $7,000 than a Model 3 with no incentives. So I think Model 3 will be fine. And don't forget, there's what, 500,000 people waiting for it, and they can produce at best maybe 200,000 next year. So even half of the people, cancel their reservations and 0 people join the list, which is really unlikely. They're still good. The sales are going to still be just fine. And we don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the world, right? Because, the incentives and everything is only, there's more and more of it in the rest of the world. So I think Tesla is going to be just fine. And I think my video just froze. Oh, no, here it is. By the way, let me know if you guys like the quality of the picture a little bit better. I'm using a different camera here, so I'm excited. R-Race2 in the chat room says, wouldn't it be better for the brand and bragging rights if no credit was awarded, showing the true demand for Teslas? Yeah, it would be great, but at this point, I think we're just trying to make it as a whole electric car movement type of thing, because they, the overall global sales of electric cars are still about 1%. So we have a long way to go, and any slowdown obviously is not necessarily good. It's actually bad, right? But I believe The Model S and Model X sales are going to be untouched, and the Model 3 sales are going to be just fine for the next year or two, because I think that list is going to keep growing regardless of the incentives and tax credits. And yes, I know some of the people will drop off, but people who are picking between the BMW 3 Series and Model 3, especially once they start seeing them on the road, especially once they start seeing their friends driving it, I think it's going to be no-brainer, and without any kind of incentives, federal or state, Model 3 can easily compete with the BMW 3 and Audi A4 and Mercedes C-Class just on price. So I think we're going to be just fine. So FB Diesel says, love your page, just sign up on Patreon. By the way, thank you for that segment. I have just opened my Patreon page. The link is down below. Thank you for your support, but also I am providing some exclusive footage, behind the scene footage, and bloopers, and a lot of other things that you guys can check out there. Thank you for your support. I already have a video about Lucid Air headquarters, about something that I don't think too many people know. The video is over there, but thank you so much for your support. And of course, I should mention that this video is sponsored, just like the rest of the channel, by Evanex, the Tesla accessories for our Teslas. Now, one thing I'm going to segue into, and I love this segment, which is comment of the day. And this, I actually had a couple today, but I'm not really sure if we have time for both. So I'm gonna go with the very first one. This one comes from Alexander C. He says, may I answer more important question you brought up in the chat, which is referring to yesterday. When enough range is enough? We were talking about, when can you call an electric car an electric car? And, when do we stop expanding the technology to the range? Like, how many miles is enough for people to be comfortable? So he talks about taking a trip with his Honda Civic, and he says it was about 560 miles, and he could, accomplish it on 1 tank of gas. And the thing is if he buys a Model 3 or another electric car, he won't be able to make those trips, at least for now, at least, with not such reliable supercharging network. Not reliable, but not as available. And this is exactly the point I was trying to make, is that for everyday driving, I mean, we're talking about 50 to 100 miles. Most people do not drive more than that. So for everyday driving, those cars are perfectly fine. However, everybody takes trips, and some people take it once a month, some people take it a few times a year, but nevertheless, nobody wants to get a car that they're going to have to replace, which means rent another car, when they're taking a trip, and that would be a deal breaker. So we have to make sure that the range is good enough for those people who travel. We have to make sure that this infrastructure is there when they do need the charge, whenever they need to supercharge and so forth. So those go hand in hand. So 300 miles is a great range right now that we're going to have, we have in Model S, we have it now in Model 3, but I believe it needs to grow to about, I think he's right on the money, about 500-600 miles, because I mean, you can't really travel more than that. I think it's already going to cover about, 10 hours of driving in 1 day. So I think that's where we would max out. So I think that's actually not a bad idea as far as what the range needs to be. And after that, I think it's going to be about speed of charging rather than the range. So thank you so much for that comment. I have another one, but I'm kind of running out of time. So once again, please visit my Patreon page if you can and check it out. Of course, thank you for contributing it. Tomorrow we of course will have another show. So sorry I didn't get to too many questions in the chat room, just a really big topic, but I would love to see some comments in the section when you guys are watching it on replay. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you guys next time, and remember to stay charged.